And this thing is getting even more bizarre.
First thing that at Hermes boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. But what is the real cost out of the factory? Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you step by step. First thing first, Hermes only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called Muti from Italy. And the second is Weinheimera from Germany. And the third is Paz from France. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD.
For decades, Louis Vuitton has been the gold standard of luxury, the kind of brand that doesn't chase customers. Customers chase it, but that might be changing fast, because right now, one of the most powerful markets in the world, China, is turning its back on this fashion empire.
Most of them are made in China, and most of them are made in our factory. Yeah, I'm telling you. So why these luxury brands never tell you that? Because they are trying to pretend to be products of some sophisticated European countries like Italy or...
And it's not just whispers or quiet discontent. This time, it's loud, angry, and very public. Reports of unethical labor practices, skyrocketing prices, and tone-deaf campaigns have been bubbling beneath the surface for years. But now, that pot has officially boiled over. And what pushed it past the tipping point wasn't a protest in Shanghai or a viral TikTok. It was a scathing expose from Megyn Kelly, who called out the brand in a way that's impossible to ignore. What she revealed could cost Louis Vuitton not just millions, but billions. So what really happened? What did Louis Vuitton do that triggered this level of backlash in one of its most valuable markets? And more importantly, is this just the beginning of something even bigger? Let's peel back the layers and expose the truth behind the scandal that might finally take down fashion's most untouchable name.
Point is, I think it's crazy how designer brands have been selling things for thousands when China sell them on and literally they're so cheap. If the Chinese manufacturers are making the same, like the actual Birkins, and then they are also selling these on the side as well, technically this is an absolute bargain because it's the exact same material as a...
In China, owning Louis Vuitton isn't just about fashion. It's about status, prestige, and power. For years, the brand was seen as a symbol of having made it. The bags weren't just accessories, they were investments. The monogram didn't just scream wealth, it whispered exclusivity. And Louis Vuitton knew it. By 2023, the Chinese market accounted for nearly 35% of global luxury sales. And Louis Vuitton was sitting at the top of that pyramid, with celebrities flaunting their latest LV drops and influencers lining up for limited edition collabs. It looked like nothing could slow them down. But behind the sleek runway shows and glossy ad campaigns, a storm was brewing.
A slowdown and a contraction in the global luxury market. About 50 million people either opted out or were forced out of the luxury market over the past 2 years.
I do feel people started to get tired of purchasing products and realized that we just bought too much. And they didn't really make us happy.
Chinese consumers were starting to ask harder questions. Why were LV products so much more expensive in China than in Europe? Why was customer service in local boutiques often dismissive, even condescending? Why were there so many reports of returns being denied, even when products were defective? The luxury experience, it seemed, was becoming less about quality and more about control.
We are going to be successful. In a few weeks, the shop was open. We sell the most expensive products in a country where everybody was going by bicycle.
Insiders say that while LV was enjoying record profits, Chinese buyers were feeling disrespected and used. And then came the accusations, not from activists or protesters, but from customers, real, loyal fans of the brand who felt they'd been misled, overcharged, or flat out ignored.
Oh, that's no quality issue. It's luxury brand washing.
Hermes, you guys, it's time to show off your factories. No, I don't want to wait to go on YouTube and watch a beautiful documentary on show them off right here on TikTok. Let the world see. Okay, get like China. You gotta be ghetto about it. Just let people know.
To make matters worse, smaller luxury brands, more modern, more transparent, were gaining traction fast. Chinese Gen Z shoppers, who make up a rising percentage of fashion consumers, were gravitating toward names that felt more in touch with reality and less like legacy empires living off their own hype. The writing was on the wall. Louis Vuitton's hold on the Chinese market was weakening.
De l'entrée, où on me donne des morceaux de cuir jusqu'au moment où je vais avoir livré ma pièce, je veux pas qu'on reproduise un geste de façon indéfinie en se disant bon bah je fais toujours ce même geste et donc je pense qu'on est vraiment là pour apprendre un métier.
And while the brand pretended nothing was wrong, something was building behind the scenes, something much worse than bad reviews or lower sales. The first real cracks started showing in late 2023, when rumors began to swirl about Louis Vuitton's supply chain, particularly concerning the treatment of workers in overseas factories. Whispers of low wages, poor conditions, and overworked laborers were nothing new in the fashion industry, but this time, the allegations felt different. They were persistent. They were detailed, and they were coming from sources that couldn't be ignored. One report, shared across Chinese social media, claimed that workers in Southeast Asia producing Louis Vuitton handbags were being paid less than $5 a day, with shifts that stretched 12 to 14 hours. The post gained millions of views and sparked outrage, not just at Louis Vuitton, but at what it seemed to represent, a company prioritizing profits over people.
The erosion of seawater is the best stainless steel. For one piece of bag, the hardware will cost 150 USD. The edge oil. This edge oil is imported from Italy. It's called It Seal edge oil. For each bag, it will cost 50 USD. The interior lining, it used lambskin imported from France. For each bag, the cost will be 100 USD. And also inside, there is a zipper from Riri brand. And the zipper for one bag is 10 US.
Then came the videos. A former employee from a subcontracted 55 factory posted blurred footage showing what looked like cramped, unsafe workstations and unsanitary conditions. The video was quickly taken down on Chinese platforms, but not before screenshots and mirror uploads exploded across Weibo and Douyin. The narrative had taken root, and no amount of PR spin could stop it.
And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin, okay? The thread. And of course, for Hermes Birkin, the thread is also the best top level. It's called Fil Al Chinois from France. This is actually the Rolls Royce in thread. For each bag, the cost is 25 USD. And then the hardware. See, this hardware is called 316 hardware. It's also known as the ocean stainless steel because it can...
Worse still, customers in China started posting about their own negative experiences. A woman in Beijing described being refused a refund for a handbag that arrived with visible damage. Another claimed her limited edition purse began to peel after just 2 weeks, and the store manager accused her of mishandling it. Each story poured fuel on the fire. People no longer saw Louis Vuitton as aspirational. They saw it as arrogant. The veil had lifted. This wasn't luxury. This was misuse, wrapped in a $3,000 price tag. By early 2024, boycott hashtags began trending. Chinese influencers quietly removed LV sponsorships. Some fashion bloggers who had once proudly showcased their monogrammed wardrobes were now openly criticizing the brand's ethics. The shift was subtle at first, but it was real. And just when things couldn't get any worse, Megyn Kelly dropped the bombshell that turned the scandal into a full-on crisis. Just when the backlash against Louis Vuitton was beginning to swell, Megyn Kelly stepped in, and the story exploded. Now, love her or hate her, Megyn Kelly has one thing that's undeniable: reach. Her audience spans millions, and when she decides to take aim at a target, people listen. But no one expected her to wade into the world of fashion scandals, and especially not one involving Louis Vuitton. In a fiery segment that quickly went viral, Kelly did what few mainstream voices had dared to do: call out the luxury giant by name. And she didn't hold back. She accused Louis Vuitton of profiting off modern-day serfdom, citing dangerous labor conditions and a carefully orchestrated marketing machine designed to cover up the truth. Her words hit a nerve. This isn't fashion. It's misuse, dressed in a designer label. And the people paying the highest price aren't the customers. They're the workers you'll never never see in a glossy campaign. She then referenced the leaked factory reports, naming locations in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and parts of Western China, where labor laws are often murky or loosely enforced. But what really shocked viewers was the allegation that some factories may have had indirect ties to forced labor systems, a connection that, if proven, could land LVMH in serious legal hot water. Louis Vuitton's response? Silence. No press release. No public denial. Not even a statement clarifying their supply chain ethics. The brand chose to ignore it entirely, a move that, to many, felt like an admission of guilt. The clip was picked up by several Chinese news outlets and shared widely on social media. Headlines translated into Mandarin warned, "American host exposes Louis Vuitton's dark secrets." And just like that, a controversy that was already simmering suddenly boiled over into international scandal. More influencers began speaking out. Industry insiders hinted that LVMH executives were in crisis meetings, scrambling to manage the fallout. But it was too late. The story had grown too big, too fast. And the worst part? There was still more to come. Because while Megyn Kelly's words were savage, what really made people furious were the details that followed. After Megyn Kelly's expose hit the airwaves, the floodgates opened. Former employees, factory workers, and even luxury retail staff began sharing their own experiences. And what they revealed painted a far more dangerous picture than anyone expected. One ex-factory supervisor from Ho Chi Minh City spoke anonymously to a French journalist, claiming that cut corners and untraceable subcontracts were standard practice. According to him, smaller workshops would fulfill Louis Vuitton orders using underpaid labor with little oversight. He even alleged that some raw materials were sourced from regions flagged for human rights violations and then laundered through intermediaries to avoid scrutiny. On Chinese social media, a former LV store associate described internal pressure to push damaged or irregular items to customers by repackaging them creatively. When she refused to comply, she was demoted. Her story quickly went viral under the hashtag #LVPushedTooFar, racking up over 8 million views in less than 24 hours. Even more damaging, screenshots leaked from internal training documents showed LV's pricing strategy for China, and it wasn't pretty. Items sold in Paris for $2,400 were marked up to nearly $3,800 in Beijing, with no justification beyond perceived prestige. That phrase, repeated several times, became the new symbol of arrogance. Perceived prestige. Not quality, not craftsmanship, just the illusion of superiority. The backlash was instant. Luxury forums lit up with discussions about switching to homegrown Chinese designers or European brands with better labor records. A few even suggested boycotting all LVMH labels, including Dior, Fendi, and Celine, until real accountability was shown. Worse still, a viral TikTok from a former Paris-based leather worker claimed he was fired after raising questions about quality control and counterfeit swaps within LV's logistics pipeline. He didn't name names, but his claims echoed years of quiet rumors that not every Louis Vuitton bag is made where they say it is, and not every bag is what it claims to be. Suddenly, this wasn't just about labor conditions or overpricing. It was about trust. And in the luxury world, once that trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to get it back. If Louis Vuitton underestimated Chinese consumers, that miscalculation is now coming back to haunt them. In the weeks after Megyn Kelly's revelations, the reaction in China wasn't just loud, it was organized. Boycotts spread across platforms like Weibo, Xiaohongshu, and Douyin with stunning speed. Hashtags like "All Boycott LV" and "While LV Not Luxury" anymore began trending daily, racking up hundreds of millions of views. Even more telling, influencers, the very people Louis Vuitton relied on to market its products, started deleting or archiving past collaborations. One fashion content creator with over 5 million followers posted a single sentence that went viral. "Real luxury doesn't treat people like this." Her post, viewed over 15 million times, opened the floodgates. Other influencers followed suit, not with angry roasts, but with silence. They stopped posting Louis Vuitton content altogether. No more unboxings, no more haul videos. Just a quiet shift in allegiance toward newer, ethical brands, especially local Chinese designers, who began experiencing a sudden surge in demand. Then came the bag swaps. On Xiaohongshu, dozens of users began filming themselves trading in their Louis Vuitton items for handbags made by domestic designers, using the caption, "Buy LV." These videos weren't just symbolic, they were direct public rejection actions of a brand that once held untouchable status. And it wasn't just the young or the trend-conscious. Even established, wealthy consumers, the so-called first wave of Chinese luxury buyers, began speaking out. On business forums and financial blogs, they warned about Louis Vuitton's falling reputation and speculated on the long-term damage to brand equity in the region. Worse still, state-affiliated media began weighing in, framing the scandal as an example of Western corporations misusing Chinese consumers while treating them as second-class. When that narrative takes hold, especially in a nationalistic climate, it becomes more than a boycott. It becomes a movement. Louis Vuitton wasn't just losing market share, it was losing cultural legitimacy. And unlike a PR issue or a pricing error, that's not something you fix with an apology or a flash sale. Long before the labor accusations and pricing scandals, Louis Vuitton had already been walking a dangerous line in China, one paved with tone-deaf campaigns, misunderstood symbolism, and a growing sense of cultural arrogance. Back in 2022, the brand released a limited edition Chinese New Year collection that was meant to celebrate the Year of the Tiger. Instead, it was met with confusion and, in some cases, ridicule. The designs were criticized for looking like cheap knockoffs of Chinese culture, rather than authentic tributes. One critic wrote bluntly, "It's as if a French intern Googled Chinese pattern and just ran with it, and this wasn't a one-off mistake." In previous years, 55 had misused Chinese calligraphy, misrepresented traditional symbols, and launched marketing campaigns that felt more like caricature than celebration. What might seem like small errors to Western audiences were seen as glaring disrespect in China, especially when coming from a brand that demanded so much loyalty and money from its Chinese customers. The deeper issue, Louis Vuitton often failed to localize meaningfully. While competitors like Gucci and Burberry began hiring cultural consultants and building deep partnerships with Chinese artists, LV remained stubbornly rooted in its own Eurocentric identity. It treated China as a marketplace, not a culture. One particularly dangerous incident came when a former LV executive reportedly referred to the Chinese market as transactional but loyal, implying that loyalty could be bought, no matter how the brand behaved. That quote, when leaked, became a rallying cry for angry consumers. Add to this the absence of major Chinese ambassadors during key campaigns, while Korean and Western celebrities were featured front and center. And the message became clear. China was good enough to spend, but not good enough to spotlight. In a country where face, pride, and respect carry deep cultural weight, that's not just bad branding. It's a direct insult. And once those cultural wounds were reopened by the labor and pricing scandals, the backlash wasn't just about ethics anymore. It was personal. What started as a regional backlash is now turning into a global reckoning. At first, luxury giants outside of Louis Vuitton, including Gucci, Dior, and Prada, stayed quiet, hoping the heat wouldn't reach them. But the problem is, in a world where reputation moves at the speed of a viral tweet, silence can look like guilt. And consumers began asking a very uncomfortable question. If this is happening at Louis Vuitton, what about the rest? The fashion world has always depended on illusion, prestige, rarity, heritage. But now, that illusion is cracking. Young buyers, especially in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, aren't just chasing aesthetics. They're asking for transparency, accountability, and values that match their own. Across Europe and the US, watchdog groups and fashion ethics accounts on social media are calling for audits of labor conditions across all LVMH-owned brands. There's renewed attention on greenwashing, where brands pretend to be sustainable while outsourcing pollution-heavy production. Suddenly, Made in Italy or Paris Fashion House aren't enough to reassure buyers anymore, and the numbers are starting to show it. Reports from Q2 2025 show a noticeable dip in LVMH's Chinese market revenue, with other major Asian markets following suit. Meanwhile, smaller independent luxury brands with clean supply chains are seeing a sharp rise in engagement and sales, many of them digitally native, direct-to-consumer, and Asia-based. Even celebrities are getting cautious. A handful of Western stars have quietly paused collaborations or refused to post LV products, not because they're taking a moral stance, but because they know public sentiment is shifting fast. Nobody wants to be the face of a collapsing empire, and that's what this could become, the beginning of the end for the old guard of luxury. Because if Louis Vuitton, the brand that defined modern prestige, can fall out of favor this fast, then no one is safe. For decades, decades, Louis Vuitton was untouchable, built on centuries of heritage, backed by billions in marketing, and elevated by the kind of celebrity worship most companies can only dream of. But as the dust settles from this scandal, a harsh truth is becoming clear. Even the biggest empires can crumble. The scandal in China has exposed something deeper than a bad campaign supply chain. It's revealed a massive disconnect between luxury brands and the modern world, between the glossy image they project and the reality they're hiding. Brands like Louis Vuitton rose to power by selling not just products, but stories. Stories of craftsmanship, of elite status, of timeless value. But in 2025, consumers want a different kind of story. One that includes ethics, fairness, culture, and respect. They want to know who made their bag, what conditions they worked under, how much they were paid, and what that brand stands for beyond profit. And if that story doesn't add up, they're walking away, no matter how expensive the logo on the label might be. The fallout from this scandal won't just be financial, it will be reputational. Because once a luxury brand loses its mystique, that sense of trust and awe, it doesn't come back easily, especially not when there are dozens of new designers waiting in the wings, offering something fresher, fairer, and more connected to the world as it is today. Louis Vuitton can try to rebrand, to apologize, to deny, or to ignore. But unless it completely overhauls its values and starts listening to the very people who built its empire, this might not be just a crisis. It might be a turning point. Louis Vuitton isn't just facing a scandal, it's facing a mirror. And what's staring back is a brand that's built its fortune on exclusivity, image, and silence. In a time when the world is demanding inclusivity, accountability, and transparency, China was never just a market. It was the market, the engine behind Louis Vuitton's explosive growth. And now, that engine is stalling. Not because of one expose or one angry customer, but because of years of arrogance finally catching up. Megyn Kelly may have lit the match, but Louis Vuitton poured the gasoline. And now, as the luxury industry watches nervously, a question lingers in the air. Not just for LV, but for every brand built on old money and old rules. What do you do when the people who made you a powerhouse suddenly decide they've had enough? If this story shocked you, you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Do you think Louis Vuitton can bounce back, or is this the beginning of the end for old luxury? And don't forget to subscribe for more exposés on the brands you thought you knew.